Would you please pray with me? O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Take my lips and speak with them. Take our minds and think with them. Take our hearts and set them on fire. Amen. So as I was growing up, one of the things that I think my mother mostly instilled in me, but my father probably had something to do with it, was a value on individualism and a value on being your own person. I remember in early elementary school, we would talk about you are unique or you are you, and you'd have these different weeks when we'd celebrate each of the different kids in class. And that was something that I really took to heart, how it was important to be myself and to not give in to peer pressure to just do what everyone else was doing. And on the one hand, I think I did a really good job of this, because I can remember doing mostly just picking out what I wanted to wear or what I wanted to do based on what I wanted and what I liked. On the other hand, I would also acknowledge that it probably had some consequences to it. I was not the most popular kid in the class. I was certainly not the most normal kid in the class. And especially by the time I got to middle school, that differentiation really begins to happen. And I don't know if it's because when I was in elementary school, we had a nice class of like 30 people, and it was everyone kind of knew everyone, and you go off to middle school, and suddenly you're in with 500 other people in your one grade. And like, once there's that many, it's pretty easy to kind of lose sight of who you are in the midst of all this. And there's a lot of pressure to conform that seems to happen as we enter into those years. I suspect if we pulled everyone here, middle school and or high school would not be the highlight of our life. Am I right? Maybe we look back and we have some fond memories of it, but we also look back and think, it really wasn't a whole lot of fun. It seems to be one of those eras that we end up all picking on each other. We're all kind of trying to figure out where we sort out and how we fit in. And on the one hand, like I said, I think I did pretty well at the time. I don't remember being depressed or hurt or anything else about the fact that I didn't fit in some negative way at the time. But as I look at myself later, I realize that the negative experiences of rejection and everything else that I experienced in middle school still affect me today, that now I have that desire. I don't want to be like that. I want to be liked. I want to fit in. And now that I know better how to do it, it's almost like I have more temptations now than when I was that age. To find out what the cool thing is, to be the right person, to do what I need to do to be loved. Because it's fun to be a part of a crowd, right? I mean, just looking at today as we were doing the processional around, it felt a little awkward at first when I'm the only guy sitting there waving my palm branch. Then they're thinking, come on, is anyone else going to join me? Or am I just going to be the weirdo that's walking around the sanctuary waving the palm branch? Right? And then a couple people go, and then it becomes a little easier. Well, if everyone's doing it, then I guess I can do it too, right? It's a lot easier to be a part of a crowd than it is to be that lone individual or that one of few people who are doing it. I mean, we can see that not just in our worship service, but we can see that in society, right? You go to a football game and people paint themselves up and stand and scream and shout and do everything. They did it on a street corner by themselves. We kind of think a little differently about them, right? But in that confine, with everyone else doing it, it becomes normal. What everyone else does has a profound effect on us. And sometimes it has a subtle effect. I heard a while ago, they've done a study that found that people tend to hang out with people of similar body weight. And what they thought was, is it just that selective, like, well, if I'm a little more overweight, then I like to hang out with other people who are more overweight, or skinny people just like to hang out with skinny people because we're looking for the same sort of people. And what the studies found was actually more, it's not that we tend to associate with those people, it's that we tend to start acting like each other. So if you're hanging out with people who are very conscious of what they're eating, you start to be conscious of what you're eating. If you hang out with people who are very active, you start to be more active. If you hang out with people who like the all-you-can-eat buffet, you start liking the all-you-can-eat buffet. It's not that we deliberately say, well, I'm just going to do this to fit in. It's just we just naturally start to do it. We aren't necessarily seeking it, but as we're surrounded by other people, we start to be like them. be very subtle, but it just starts to creep into all that we do. And the reality is, it can even influence our faith. One of the things that I've been pondering recently is this question of, why am I a Christian? I mean, because on the one hand, I'd like to say, well, of course I'm a Christian because Christ has this answer for all of us that's important for everybody. But then there's a part of me that goes, how much of the fact that I'm a Christian is influenced by the fact that my mom and my dad are Christians? And how much of the fact that I'm United Methodist is influenced simply by the fact, not because United Methodists are right and everyone else is wrong, but because my mom and my dad took me to a United Methodist church. And so I grew up in that environment. You know? I'd like to think that the church is the right place for people to be, but sometimes I also go, am I just thinking that because I'm a part of that? How do we know what's really us coming into decision, and how do we know what's really us being influenced by everybody else? Because churches, just like anything else, can be manipulative. And one of the things that I know many pastors struggle with is that reality. We don't want to put on a great show to get you to believe. We want you to believe because what we're talking about is real. We want there to be a difference between a Sunday morning sermon and a Sunday morning infomercial. For whatever reason, my channel, my TV is stuck on, I think it's on channel 9. And so it never fails. I never watch real television. I always watch like Netflix and TiVo and stuff and everything. But I turn the television on, and it seems like every time I turn it on, it's stuck on these infomercials. So I'm always hearing about these great programs on how I can learn how to sell real estate and all these other things. And you start watching, and pretty soon you start believing, right? I mean, because the guy's pretty persuasive. He's a pretty nice looking guy. And boy, if he's telling you, look at all these happy people, and I want to be like those happy people, and you start buying into it, right? Or maybe it's knives or whatever it is. They're selling it, and you start thinking that. One of the challenges in the church is we don't want you to buy it just because we got a slick production going. Right? Well, I wasn't too sure about that, Jesus, but boy, that pastor this morning, he was dressed pretty nice, and he talked pretty eloquently. I guess I could get along with this. In fact, that's what we see going on in this story on Palm Sunday, is the danger of the crowd. Because Palm Sunday is this high point, right? Jesus is coming in this triumphant processional into Jerusalem. And everyone's cheering and everyone's celebrating, and it seems like things are going so well for Jesus' ministry. He is so popular. People are listening. People are celebrating. Everything is going great. And yet the reality is that same crowd that celebrates him on Palm Sunday is the same crowd that mocks him and turns him over at the end of the week. That same crowd mentality that gets everyone so excited one day is ready to turn on him the next when people start going a different direction. It's easy to get excited when everyone else is excited. But it's when we're alone that I think we see how our loyalties really lie. What's really important is what we can do, not because other people are doing it, not because it's easy, not because it's popular, but because it's what is important to us. Even the disciples struggle to follow Christ when no one else is doing it. When the crowds come for Jesus, the disciples don't stand up and say, well, if you're going to take him, you got to take all of us. What do? They flee. They run away. And like Peter, they deny him. When they're left alone, they find it hard to be that person. And the reality is that the journey to the cross is a solo trip. This part of the Easter story, from Palm Sunday to Easter, is one we all make alone. We can't do it because everyone else is doing it. We have to do it because it matters to us. This is where our faith comes down to who we are, what we believe in. Are we willing to sacrifice as Christ sacrificed? It is not easy to step outside the norm. One of the greatest challenges and the greatest blessings of the church in America in the 21st century is that we are no longer predominantly a Christian nation. You can see that about the fact that you can go to Walmart right now and buy stuff. You can go to pretty much any restaurant in town and buy food. You can do pretty much anything else you could do on Monday morning, on Sunday morning. Right? And that makes it easy to find other things to do, whether it's sports or it's entertainment or it's work. But it also means that faith suddenly has to be something we choose to do, not something we just do because everyone else is doing it. Because the heyday of the church is often talked about in the 1950s and 60s when everyone was a part of the church. But everyone was a part of the church because you couldn't run a business if you weren't. You needed those social contacts. Where did you get them? You met them at church. You needed community. Where did you get it? You met it at church. Church was the heart and the soul. But was it the heart and the soul because of Christ? Or was it the heart and soul because it was just what everyone was doing? Christian experience is one that's meant to be lived in community, but it is one that needs to be claimed as an individual. We cannot do it just because everyone else is doing it. We have to do it because it matters to us. But the good news is, we are never truly alone. I talk about the fact that we need to make this choice for ourselves. We can't make it because mom and dad told us to make it. We can't do it because our neighbors are doing it. We have to do it for ourselves. We have to want it for ourselves. We have to claim it for ourselves. But the reality is, as alone as we may be, Christ is always with us. God is always there too. The story of the cross is the story of God being so like us. Christ was willing to suffer and die alone for us, like us, so that God can experience the same pain and anguish that we do. God knows us, and God is with us. Whether we're celebrating in a crowd, like on Palm Sunday, or we're left alone, like on Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday. God is with us. Are we ready to be with God? Amen.